Hiya, I'm Marcus from All Ages Airsoft, and today we've got a special one. Looking forward to this for a while. This is one, they're not even available in this country yet. The Perrun MOFSET, an ETU system for the M14. This will fit any of the Cyma and Marui clone and Marui M14s. It won't fit a G&G because the trigger mechanism's different. They've just released this. I've been given one to fit into a gun and to test. So we're going to go through what it takes to actually fit it. I've been looking forward to for this for some time because nobody has made a MOFSET for a version 7 gearbox at all. And I've been looking forward to this because I'm a great fan of M14s, I always have been. I'm a great fan of 7.62 battle rifles. And it's a lovely platform, great for DMR. And this will make the system, I hope, so much better. So, what we're going to do is get the action out of the stock and then see what needs to be taken out and how we put it in. From what I gather at the moment, it's a very, very simple system. So here we go. So there's no battery in this gun, it is brand new. So I'm gonna I've found over the years it's a lot easier just to make sure, that the wiring is done in such a way that I can get it out, because it's all got to come from the out the back. There we go. Out comes the trigger guard, just like the real thing. And there we are. So we will disconnect that, and then because we do not need the wiring at all. So I'm going to remove that, close that, and put that to one side for a minute, because we do not need to do anything at all to that. So this is the basic operating system. Version 7 gearbox, as Marui made it. You've got your fire selector, which is on this side, your safety catch, and one side of the trigger mechanism, and your trigger return spring is here. Your motor. And of course, as of all Cymas, they solder the connections, which is going to be a bit of a ball out, because these motor terminals are actually clipped on like a normal AEG. So the first thing we're going to do is remove all of the trigger assembly, because that unit removes it all. Then I will go downstairs and desolder these connections and clean them up. So that's the first thing to do. So we've got 4 screws, just 4 machine screws, Phillips head. So we'll just remove these. We don't, as far as I'm aware, need to do anything on the opposite side. You do have on a version 7, one screw is shorter than all the others, and that's the top one. It has to be shorter, because otherwise it would go through the gearbox and collide with the piston. Always something worth bearing in mind. Right, we will pop this up. There we are. Remove these 2 springs. There's the outer casing. There's the disconnector and the disconnector spring. Here is the shuttle return spring. This is the actual trigger mechanism. Come on, there we are. Right, and that is going to have to be all removed. Now, I believe that this part, which is part of the trigger transfer bar, also needs to be removed. I'm not entirely certain, so we'll leave that to one side. We may need that. The rest of all of this, we need to keep. So the next thing I'll do is pull out the trigger return spring, remove the motor with the cage.
Sorry, pause. Go.
Right, so I've taken off the trigger return spring, which we will keep to one side, we need it. Remove these two screws and the whole motor shell and motor itself will come out, and then I'll go and desolder them and give them a bit of a clean up, because quite often you'll have a bit of solder left on them and it just makes life so much more difficult. Marui use normal motor terminals. They've always done that. They don't solder guns and terminals unless they have absolutely no choice. So that is the basics of the system. Now, to see how this actually goes, I believe it sits like that. That sits in there. Aha. And that is basically how it sits. Now, how the hell that is meant to activate the trigger, I will have to refer, they have released a manual for it, so I will go back to the manual. I'm going to sort out the motor, quickly refer to the manual. That is definitely how it sits on the side, but whether or not we need this part is another matter, so I will check that out. I will be back in a few minutes. Right, I've now checked the instructions, and we don't need that part, not according to the instructions anyway, and I've cleaned the solder off of the motor. So at this stage, all we now do is pop the motor and its cage back in and pop the screws back in and quickly wallop those up. There we go. Right, turn it up the other way. Now this does fit the way I thought it did. So the disconnector sits in there like so. Damn, and that's the one thing you've really got to watch out for. I think they could have possibly made this a little bit better, because if you're not careful, it is very, very easy to for the disconnector to move. You have to be quite careful. Stop filming for a minute. Right, okay, I have checked the manual, and this part of the trigger unit is not needed, so that goes with the unwanted parts. I've desoldered and cleaned off as much of the solder off of the motor cage and the motor. So we're going to pop this back in, and then we can fit the unit. Right, okay, so there we are. Now, one thing we have learnt is just to carefully hold this disconnector, because it is very, very easy to pop it out. And that needs to go, come on, out, like so. That is it. So we need the short screw first, which is the one that goes at the top. Right, I'm not going to do them up massively tight. I think it takes 3 screws by the looks of it. And one down here. And that, there we are. As I say, I'm not doing them up massively tight. There doesn't seem much play there, I've got to say. So, right, now the next thing we need is the trigger return spring, which I have put down and I can't see. No, there it is, that one. So, that is a bit of a pain. So we're just going to turn the selector around a bit. There we are. And then that, I wonder if that's the... I need to just bend this out very, very slightly because... Ah, that'll be the one. Right. There we are. Just use what that'll do. Perfect. These have got a groove in the trigger to allow... There we go. That's on. Right. Say, that doesn't move very much. So now, what we will do, that's the original wiring from the stock. So, that's negative. They have put a very, very large amount of wiring on this. For the minute, I'm not going to do them in all the way. There we go. And obviously red is positive. Now this is a bog standard gun, no modifications, it's not a DMR or anything. So all we're going to do for the minute is test it and see where we go. What I want is these come on Dean's as standard, by the way, which I quite like. Right. Alright, we've got a green flashing light, which is good. Right, now right, that should be semi. This is a clicker, what they call the clicker system. So it has more of a real feel, trigger feel. That's actually quite nice. Now we can adjust the trigger. So I'm just going to see. We can also adjust the trigger brake, I believe. That makes the trigger a lot lighter. So you can set how your trigger feels. And that basically pulls, this is part of the trigger assembly, this is a big magnet. So that pushes the bar away from the magnet. So you can set how much interference you have. Which is very nice, actually, I've got to say. I like that. And we'll see what we can do here. That removes all the backlash. So any over travel you can remove. Too much. I'd say that's about right. This is a magnetic system. So here we've got magnets, and inside this circuit board are essentially magnetic detectors, and that's how it works. I think that needs just a tad more removed. There you go. So that's the only thing I'm not overly impressed with, and the manual does show it, is you've got a shit ton of wiring to find homes for. Me personally, I think that's way too much, but hey ho. Because wiring, you really don't want, there we are, that amount of wiring. But you've got all this that we've got to find homes for. And part of me wonders why they didn't just make the wiring a lot shorter. Hey ho, that's my only gripe. We will put this through some testing and see how it goes. Thanks for watching.